I believe, as you know, with your opening statement, the start was lackluster. Expectations were extremely high. First time in the history of Nigeria to have an opposition party win an election at the national level. Therefore people expected President Buhari to hit the ground running, especially for somebody who had lost 3 previous elections. It would mean that there must be some plan, even if it is a high level, that's in the bag that can be pulled out and executed, and that hadn't happened. In fact, we would even go back as to say that things started extremely slow. Cabinet formation, even key appointments of people like the chief of staff and all of that took a little bit of time. Then the cabinet, then nothing for a while. And of course, it was also a very unfortunate time for anybody to be the president of Nigeria. You know, oil prices have started declining. The country was heading towards recession. And in fact, at the Nigerian Economic Summit, or the first year that President Buhari came into power, we predicted a recession by mid-2016. And unfortunately, nothing was done. And then we got hit by the recession mid-2016. Okay. So all of those actually have now shown that not much had been done, especially when it had something to do with the economy. The growth had been negative for a while, and then we recovered, and now we are still sub 2% growth. Even the one that is just recently announced is still lackluster as far as I'm concerned, because this is for a country whose population is growing at the rate of 2.3 to 2.5%. Yeah. GDP growth of 2% is really below par.
Muda, let me come to you. I mean, obviously, a lot has been said about how the first 4 years have panned out, but then there obviously is an opportunity now for things to do things. Maybe just tweak 1 or 2 things here and there, and this administration has said several times that look, especially when it concerns the ERGP, the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan, that it's not cast in stone. It goes back from time to time to change this or tweak that. But in terms of how we're going to get off to a good start now, what are your expectations? The cabinet, we know that, or we hear that there will be a reshuffle, but what are your expectations in terms of how fast and the urgency to get things, to hit the ground running?
Well, my feeling is that we are likely to see continuity of what we already have. I'm not expecting that there will be any dramatic or major changes. Already we are seeing the appointment of the Central Bank of Nigeria. We have had his pronouncements about continuing with the unconventional, unorthodox monetary policy, whatever that is. So it is likely that we are likely to see a replication of what happened in the last 4 years. Because, for the economy to actually move forward, we expect to see changes in terms of policies, in terms of the regulatory environment, in terms of our institutions. We want to see a radical departure from what it has been. But if from what I'm seeing, at least starting with what the appointment that have been made, and it is not likely that there will be a major shift. And another thing I also observe is that what you saw in the last 4 years are kind of institutions operating in silos. You have the CBN in its own environment doing all sorts of things. You have the customs, you have the finance ministry, you have all sorts of people, you have the agric ministry. You see, there is no rallying point, as it were, to point in a clear direction that this is where we are going, and whose voice will be respected as far as the economy is concerned. So that is my worry. So what we are likely to see, in my view, because the argument is that people have voted for this administration because they believe that the administration is doing something right. So if that is the thinking, if that is the mindset, then it is likely that we are likely to continue what we have been doing in the last 4 years.
Kyari, do you agree? And especially that part about, the institutions working, not working in cohesion?
It's a combination of things. Now, the expectation for a second term, any second term, is that you would want to leave a legacy, because there is no more politicking as far as you're concerned, right? You are supposed to
and
establish
perhaps an opportunity
something.
to take some very hard decisions.
Yeah, and also make tough choices and tough decisions. Now, I think there is an Albert Einstein saying that if you continue to do the same thing expecting a different outcome, you know, that's the definition of foolishness or something to that extent. If we have seen, basically there has been a renewal of terms of 2 or 3 chief executives of parastatals, including the CBN governor. That indicates to me that even the cabinet may not be changed that much. And if that's the case, then nothing would happen. Meaning, by nothing would happen, I mean that the same thing will continue. And I don't think we have the luxury of time to continue on this same trajectory. We have to boost our growth projections.
Let me ask you this, sorry to bother. What are those urgent policies, decisions that need to be taken now?
Right.
Obviously, I mean, if we do the things, you know, the same way, the same results we get. But
Correct.
what needs to be different now?
The urgency is in ensuring that you make whatever policy decisions that you have decided to do quickly so that you make course corrections. I do have some disagreement on the monetary policy that is espoused by the CBN governor. However, some things have worked out, such as the reserves being higher. But if you are saving and foreign investments are not coming in, or they are coming in at a very expensive cost, then you must not be seen to be doing the right thing. And then if there is no fiscal and monetary policy coordination, and that's where the ministries and MDAs come into play, then you would see that everybody, it's like herding cats. Everybody is going in different directions, saying different things, doing different things. And at the end of the day, it is the business environment that would end up suffering. And to me, that is not the type of legacy that a second-term president ought to leave for the country. Because it is just the beginning, right? And this is where things need to happen. Assuming that 1/3 of the cabinet or technical people or experts in their various fields of endeavor coming in rather than political appointees. 2, if a good deal of them, by the way, this is the only cabinet where we don't have an economist in any of the critical ministries, whether it's the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, or Trade and Investment. Okay, the Trade and Investment has somebody who was an investment banker, but outside of that, most others, we do not have the right pegs in the right holes.
Kyari, I'm going to have to hold that thought. Muda, let me bring you in here. A number of positives have come out in the last 4 years. I mean, especially as relates to the business environment. We've seen the Presidential Enabling Business Environment Council, PEBEC, being set up. We've seen some FX stability. So for you, what are those key milestones, if you will, that you've seen or that have happened that we can continue to build on and just maybe just get more momentum or traction?
Well, I like the emphasis on the issue of ease of doing business. And I like the enthusiasm and the commitment that has been demonstrated by government, especially at the level of the Vice President. I like the kind of engagement that has taken place in the last 4 years with the economic team led by the Vice President. I think that is something that is commendable, and it's something that I wish will continue. But I also like to see a much more focus on the fundamentals. Now, the ease of doing business, perhaps maybe following from the parameters of the World Bank, talk about registering business, land documentation, you know, all those soft issues, okay. You know. But if you look at a typical investor, you know, there are bigger issues to deal with. You are talking of the issue of infrastructure, for instance. You are talking of the issue of, you know, policy environment in the oil and gas sector. That sector, you know, which normally should have been a cash cow, and it is still a cash cow, but can do a lot more. You know,
so improving the policy framework within.
You need to see the kind of experience that investors are going through in the oil and gas sector.
Now,
this is mind-boggling. You know, and I mean, for 4 years, the refineries didn't function. We are spending so much to import petroleum products.
Then,
these are a lot of pressures.
I'm going to have to ask you to hold that thought,
okay,
because we're pressed for time. We have about 5 minutes left. Kyari, let me come to you. At the heart of the ERGP is diversification, to diversify this economy, reduce our reliance on oil, and go into especially labor-intensive sectors like agri. I mean, what are you hoping for this time as we continue that path?
We need to continue to execute well the ERGP. The PEBEC is just one of those outcomes of the ERGP, really, the ease of doing business aspect. But generally speaking, the ERGP has it's a comprehensive plan. It is in the implementation where we may not have been taking the necessary aggressive steps that need to happen. But generally speaking, I think we have a sound plan. It's getting the right people to execute it is what we are lacking, I believe. But giving kudos to the administration for some of these policy issues like ERGP and PEBEC, those are key things that they can stand on and push forward. Now, I just saw something about EFCC raiding MTN. I mean, to me, those are just stupid things. If EFCC needs information about the shareholders, it can talk to another government agency, SEC, to get whatever they need. If you are investigating, let me not know that you are investigating. Go and do whatever you need to do. And it also sends a signal to other foreign investors that may want to come in or that may have already come in. They may decide not to go ahead with their investments. And by the way, Africa is becoming a single block. So if I'm going to come into West Africa, I might rather, parachute down to Ghana than to Nigeria if the policy is unfriendly, because whatever product I produce can still cross over. So those are some of the key things that I need to see in the area of implementation.
Well, speaking about key things, Muda, let's talk about jobs. Obviously key for this government, and we've heard, numbers have been thrown around, but then there's also been that, the questions about, okay, what kind of jobs have been created so far? What is the quality of the jobs? Are they permanent jobs? Are they temporary jobs? Who are the people who are being employed? Your thoughts on job creation in the last 4 years and what we can do differently this time for the next 4 years?
Well, my view about job is that you need investors to create jobs. So you achieve so much in job creation to the extent that you get more people to invest. You cannot divorce issues of job creation for the kind of investment environment that you create. So when we are talking about jobs, we need to grow investment. And it has to start from the micro enterprise level to the small business level to the medium size, to the large corporates, to the foreign investors, to the domestic investors, across all sectors. So it is a function of the kind of policy environment that you create. I told you now about the kind of our failure to attract investment in the oil and gas sector, both upstream and downstream. The downstream is now almost completely dominated by NNPC. No private capital is coming in. So how do you create jobs in that space? And the quality of jobs you can create in oil and gas sector. So the policy environment to create jobs is very important. Okay. There is also the issue of the trade policy. We need to also come up with the right kind of trade policy. All the customs knows about is about how to meet revenue targets. And in the process, they hurt the economy, they hurt a lot of investors. And when I look at the revenue profile of even the federal government, customs revenue is just it's less than 5% of revenue. And if you talk to the private sector operators, the kind of harassment and intimidation and all sorts of things they create for investors just because they are chasing revenue targets.
Muda, I wish we had more time, but we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time today.